guys, it's time for part 2 of the Monday Q&A, and let's jump right into these questions. Is it possible to put 100 pounds on the big three, bench, squat, and deadlift in 6 months without gear? Obviously, for a novice lifter, it shouldn't even take you 6 months. It should take you 2 months to put 100 pounds on, maybe a month or less on your big three. So that's not really a problem there. If you're talking about a more advanced lifter, if they're already a power lifter who's been doing powerlifting a couple of years, probably not going to happen without drugs. But if they've been doing just general strength training or bodybuilding and someone switches over to an actual true powerlifting program from that, then yeah, absolutely, it is very possible to put 100 pounds on drug-free for an intermediate or advanced bodybuilder or strength trainer who switches to a full power training protocol. Yeah, it can be done drug-free in that situation. So it's just an issue of how advanced you are and what sort of training you've been doing previously. All right, next question. Can cardio improve nutrient partitioning? Well, we know that nutrient partitioning, and what that means is the amount of insulin sensitivity in your body and how your body transports fuel around and glucose and calories in general, just how it transports it through the body is in terms of tissue priorities. And what we mean by this is ideally most of it going to your muscle tissue instead of fat cells, and then everything else going to organs, and so that you're not really feeding your fat cells very much. Yeah, you can do it with cardio. Obviously, weight training is the most effective means, but right behind it is going to be any sort of high intensity cardio. Now, if you can do something for 30 minutes straight, it's simply not intense enough to give you very much in the way of any sort of metabolic benefits or nutrient partitioning. But if you're doing hill sprints or GPP work or very intense interval training that you cannot sustain for more than 20 minutes, even with the intervals and downtime, then we're getting to a point where, yeah, this type of cardio is going to be able to significantly enhance your nutrient partitioning and the way that your body utilizes calories overall. So you're going to have some very serious metabolic benefits to that type. So it's an issue of what type of cardio you're doing. But taking a 30-minute long jog, no, it's simply not going to happen unless you were completely and 100% sedentary before you started doing it. All right, next question. If you had good arm genetics and good genetics overall, would you still choose strength training or switch to bodybuilding? For me, I actually enjoy strength training more than bodybuilding. So even if my bicep wasn't torn and I could keep them even, and I did have a little better insertions, better tricep insertions, narrower hips, the things that I would personally need to do really, really well as a competitive bodybuilder, I would still, even if I decided to compete in bodybuilding also, I think for me, I would still want to do powerlifting. So I would end up doing some sort of power building protocol to where I spend part of my year focusing exclusively on something like West Side training, and then I would spend the other part of my year doing basically power building or mixed phase type training, to where I'm doing doubles and triples on certain days and then doing 8 to 10 rep sets on others. But I don't think it is necessary to even do up to 10 rep sets to be very, very successful as a competitive bodybuilder. So even then, a lot of my stuff would still be in the 5 to 8 rep range on more of those what people would term hypertrophy days. And that's more of how I would personally train in that situation, because I love heavy training and I love strength training, and I cannot stand the idea of having non-functional muscles. So for me, I just couldn't stand the idea of having 19-inch arms and being weak. I just couldn't be happy in that scenario. All right, last question. Is it possible with solid nutrition to look aesthetic training like a power lifter? Yeah, of course it is. There are power lifters who look like bodybuilders, who don't even bodybuild on the side. And take someone like Dan Green. He's a great example. The guy's very aesthetic, and he stays pretty close to and sometimes under 10% body fat during different parts of the year, just through his nutrition and obviously his supplementation. So it is very possible to do so, and there are quite a few power lifters who are aesthetic. It's just the thing is, if you're doing exclusively power training, you're not going to have the same muscle balance that someone who trains heavily for aesthetics is. Someone who trains to be very aesthetic is going to have rear delts, side delts, and front delts that are all in proper proportion to each other. Powerlifter might not have that. He might have one of those three heads lagging or not in proportion to the other aesthetically. Everything's going to be balanced, your biceps to your triceps. You're going to have focus on weak points, and most powerlifters don't care about that, so they get just as big as bodybuilders. If they're on the same amount of drugs and the same amount of calories, they will be just as big as a bodybuilder. But they won't always have the aesthetic balance. So what a lot of guys do who do train primarily for strength training and power training but still want to be aesthetic, they just go through and do some extra work to balance things out. As I like to jokingly say, and some guys when I'm chatting just with friends of mine, I go, look, if you're a power lifter who still wants to look like a bodybuilder, run West Side Barbell and throw in some concentration curls and side laterals. And diet and cut down to a low body fat. And that's all you have to do. You'll then be a power lifter who at least can be passable as a bodybuilder and be reasonably aesthetic. And that's generally all it takes to do that. Unless your structure just prevents you from being aesthetic. So yeah, it can absolutely be done, and really you can still pull that off with only 5 to 10% of your training being geared towards aesthetics. You just need that 10% to balance things back out that get imbalanced from all the heavy power training and heavy accessory work for powerlifting, because you don't always build a balanced physique aesthetically and visually from doing that. And because a lot of the guys spend a lot of the year bulking, they're not always ripped, but there are power lifters who compete with deep abs at the actual meets. It's just a lot of people are used to seeing the heavier weight classes. When you start dropping down to 90 kilos and less, there's a lot of ripped guys competing. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you next time.